Well, here we come to a video today, which is going to be on the phrase in Paul in Romans chapter 11, all Israel will be saved, or to make it a little fuller, in this way, all Israel will be saved. It raises questions for us. What does Paul mean by all Israel? I think we can quickly assume it means all Jews of his time, or all Jews, some would suggest, at some future time, at an end time of what we term history. But I don't think it would have meant that either by Paul's meaning or his readers, and we'll get into that. Second thing we have to ask is, what on earth does he mean by in this way? It's not a temporal phrase. In this way, all Israel will be saved. It's not a temporal phrase, and then, or after this, all Israel will be saved. There's other Greek common phrases he could have used should that be his desire. But he always uses the phrase there in what we call a modal way, the means by which something takes place. In this way, all Israel will be saved. So we have to look at what's he talking about before that to decide what is meant by in this way. In this process, the end result is all Israel will be saved. Questions that arise. And the big issue in Paul's day is God faithful? Is he going to be faithful to what he's promised? And that raises the question, who did he promise to? And it would be, I think, to shortchange it to suggest, well, he promised it to the people who are currently living at Paul's time or the time of Jesus in the land. No, we have to go back in history and go a little bit bigger than that. So let me start by asking this question. The word Israel, is it defined ethnically or is it defined by faith? And historically, we'll discover that those who are part of Israel are not simply those who are have the DNA, let me put it that way in modern language, that have the DNA or ethnically descended from Abraham. You have a mixed multitude leaves Egypt with those who descended from Abraham. That mixed multitude were not those who are ethnically descended from Abraham, and yet they're included in the people who go to the promised land. You have Rahab from Jericho. You have Ruth, a Moabite. You even have Caleb, one of the two, along with Joshua, went into the land to spy out the land. The scripture says he's a Kenizzite. The Kenizzites were not of Israel. They were not of Abraham. They have a different origin altogether. So ethnically is not high on the list, but faith is. You could be joined to Israel like Ruth. Your God will be my God. Right throughout history, there were those who were not born of Abraham's stock who became converts to Judaism. Not scripture, but historically they would say, now you are being brought near. You've been brought into the fold. And that's Paul's language in Ephesians chapter 2. Those who are far off have been brought near. It was a conversion. And if they were converted to Judaism, they then had to take on board the Torah, the circumcision, the food laws, the Sabbath observance, etc., etc. They were living under the covenant, which included the Torah, of those who were of Israel. So it's not primarily an ethnic term, it's a faith term. And this is why Paul can say not all of Israel, not all who are descended from Abraham are the seed of Abraham. And he uses a technical word there, spermas, seed. The promises were to Abraham and to his seed is the scriptural terminology. And that may be a little bit cheekily, but we got to understand the way they thought, argued is not the way that we would think or argue. Paul in Galatians says the promise was made to Abraham and to his seed, and seed is singular. Therefore, it's to Abraham and to Christ. And that was a very shorthand way of getting around the ethnic faith issue. But the point remains, and Paul's point, not all of Israel are of Abraham's seed, is not unique to him. This is an ongoing discussion among the Jews, and I'll come back to why I used the term Jew there in a little while, the Jews of Paul's day, because the different groups, Pharisees, Sadducees, the Essenes, if we assume that's who was at the Dead Sea, and from the Dead Sea Scrolls, etc., they all saw themselves far more as we're the true Israel. We're really the ones. And those a little further away, or viewed Torah a little differently, well, they're not really Christians. Sorry, they're not really of Israel. A little slip of the tongue there. But we do the same thing today, don't we? You know, if you're an evangelical Christian and you got somebody over here, yeah, believes God, goes to church, but has never been born again, well, they're not real Christians. Or even we have it today, Richard Dawkins calls himself a cultural Christian, in spite of the fact that he does not believe even that God exists. So even in our time, not all those who call themselves Christians are Christians. Not all those descended from Abraham, physically, ethnically, DNA-wise, are of Abraham, are of the seed of Abraham. So that's not a new discussion. And in that sense, Israel as a term is smaller than the Jews living in around Paul and in his day and those that he encounters. Secondly, a very, very important thing is that Jew and Israel are not synonymous. And since the early 20th century, it's been just assumed they're synonymous, just a different way of speaking about the same group of people. But it is very consistent in what we call Second Temple literature. Second Temple is from the rebuilding of the temple, Haggai, etc., right through to the time of Jesus. We often refer to intertestamental, but it's a little longer than that. The Second Temple Judaism, very, very consistent. And they do not use the term synonymously. So Jew refers to those who are living back in the land from that time on, from the time of the Babylonian exile return right through to Jesus' time. They're the Jews. They are not Israel. They are the Jews. They are of the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, and the overall term given to them was Jew. And you see, particularly in Josephus, in his writings, how the statistics show that he never, ever uses them synonymously. And I think it's true in other writers, and it's also true in Paul. Read Romans through. He's forever arguing early on about Jew, Gentile, Jew, Gentile, Jew, Greek, Jew, Greek. But he comes to Romans 9 through to chapter 11, and his language switches to Israel. He's looking at something different than simply the current scene that he's considering. Now, what's Paul trying to do in Romans 9 to 11? You know, some commentators kind of say, he's a little bit of an excursus, arguing about the gospel and who's saved and how do you get saved and what is sin and Adam and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then he comes to 9 to 11, there's a little, you know, a side piece, an excursus. But it isn't that at all, because it's not to do with, it's not even to do with the Gentile mission. Why is it that so many of his own fellow kinspeople are not responding to the gospel, but Gentiles are? Now, he'll deal with Gentiles in these chapters, but that's not what he's driving at. He's really driving at, you see it from early on, is God going to be, is he being faithful to his promises, or has he simply said, right, that was one idea, now we've got a new idea, it's all about Gentiles? Or is he faithful? And is he faithful, and therefore he cannot use language of Jews because the faithfulness must be to Israel, Israel being the term consistently used for the 12 tribes that are descended from Abram or from Jacob, the 12 sons of Jacob. So that's what he's seeking to do. Think of a scripture, for instance, Acts 1:6. Are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel? We probably come out thinking They're asking a question, a nationalistic question about the land at that time under the oppression of Rome. Are you going to restore the kingdom to the Jews? But that isn't what the question entails. Are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel at this time? And Jesus' answer is incredible because he pulls on Isaianic passages. One in particular talks about the restoration of the 12 tribes. How are they restored? By gathering them out of the quotes the ends of the earth. And so again, we'll come to that, or I will allude to that as we go on. And this video is a much shorter video of what I've written. I'll put a link to what I've written in PDF. My suggestion is if you watch this and you're really interested in pursuing it deeper, you're going to need to dig into the writings that I've put together, or the writing I put together, because it will expand on what I'm saying here. So Paul in chapter 9, he argues, first of all, when we think about Israel, we have to think it's smaller than just the descendants of Abraham. And he takes two examples. The promise comes through Isaac, not through Ishmael. Now, both are descended from Abraham. So he hits at something, the ethnic issue. The second part is where he gets very controversial, because why is he pulling on Esau and Isaac? Let me pause for a moment. Esau and Jacob. Why is he? My little error there. Why is he going for Esau and Jacob before they have done anything right? So they will not be considered because of works. He chooses to work and flow through Jacob. Why is that important? Because when he uses the word works, there's a strong allusion there to Torah, the works of the law. And he's saying, listen, ethnicity, nor even works of the law is going to be sufficient to have you included in the flow of what God is doing. So here we can suggest he's saying the flow of promises means that when we think about Israel, it's going to be smaller than we just think about everybody who's descended from Abraham, and even smaller than all those who have found adherence to the law according to the way that they understand it. So what are we saying here? He's saying that Jews, or I'm saying that Jews are part of Israel, but Jews are not Israel. There's a beyond the Jews if we want to talk about Israel. And this goes back historically to the Assyrian captivity around about 721 BC, where the Assyrians take the northern tribes away, the main one being called Ephraim, the northern tribes away, and they never come back. They're assimilated among the nations. Where are they to be found? Outside the boundaries of the land. Where are they to be found? Scattered among the nations, among the Gentiles. So we cannot consider what Paul is saying is, and now every Jew will be saved, or now all Jews will be saved. He's talking about Israel. He's thinking beyond the borders of the land of his day, and he's thinking about our people beyond. Now, it gets a little more complex. He's not talking about Jews, he's talking about Israel. And where are Israel? They're scattered among the Gentiles. So if they are to come in this way, there's going to have to be a mission that reaches out beyond the land into the land of the Gentiles, the then known world, if we're going to gather in the tribes. That's what Isaiah 49 talks about, to regather the tribes of Jacob, the tribes of Israel, where? From the ends of the earth. That's why I've raised you up. That's why Jesus says that you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea. There we've got the Jews, and in Samaria, who claim to be Israel but never claim to be Jews. And the debate among Jews was, are they of Israel or are they not? And then he goes, and into the ends of the earth. Because if we're going to see a restoration of Israel, the hopes that was made to the ancestors is going to have to be from among the nations. Then there's a wonderful other aspect to it. As the mission goes out, it is not simply to find those of the lost tribe. They're going to be swept up, or at least some of them. But it's going to be a gospel offered to the Gentiles. They come in, as always has been the offer. The difference is in they come, and the adherence is to the Messiah of Israel, to Jesus, not to the Torah of Israel. But in that way, all Israel will be saved. So the Gentile mission, which was Paul was an apostle to the Gentiles, the Gentile mission, quotes, is in this way. So he's going back to where he begins in Romans 9. Has God forgotten? Is God being unfaithful? No, he's being faithful, and there's an outreach to the Gentiles so that the very mission that Paul is involved in, the one that I believe the outpouring of the Spirit in Acts 1 compelled to take place, is the very means by which there will come a fullness, and all Israel, which is smaller than all those descended from Abraham, but bigger than as well all those ethnically descended from Abraham. It will include others, as the history of Israel, talking Old Testament here, has always indicated. In Paul's day, it is completely exaggerated, if I put it that way, or goes to another level from what they'd experienced before. So this is what I'm going to present in the PDF, that in this way, all Israel will be saved is not a temporal clause after that. It's a means, and the means is the Gentile mission is the means by which all Israel, and we need to then, as I say, have a definition for Israel, all Israel will be saved. I expand on it. I will put a link to that PDF in the description, and I hope at least that's whetted your appetite and that you kind of grapple with it for yourself. It's an issue in Paul's day, but the real issue for Paul was, has God been faithful? Can we trust God that he will fulfill whatever he has promised?